So, have you ever stopped and wondered who actually designed the world of persuasion we live in? Who wrote the original playbook for all the ads, the political campaigns, the public relations we see every single day? Well, let's get into it, because today we are pulling back the curtain on the hidden architecture of the modern mind, and the one man who basically built it from the ground up.
This is extremely dangerous to a democracy. Kind of strange, right? Hearing those words repeated like that, it has this weird hypnotic quality. But where on earth is this coming from?
Well, it turns out it's coming from local news anchors all over the United States, all of them working for the same company, the Sinclair Broadcast Group. We're talking dozens of different journalists in totally different cities, all reading the exact same script, word for word, handed down from corporate. It just makes you wonder, how in the world did we get here? To figure that out, we've got to rewind the clock about 100 years.
To really understand the machine, first, you have to meet the architect, the guy who took the messy art of persuasion and turned it into a cold, calculated science. This is Edward Bernays. And get this, that quote you're seeing, that's not someone criticizing his work. No, that's the opening line from his own book, which he proudly titled Propaganda. He wasn't hiding what he was doing, he was literally selling it as a vital part of a functioning democracy. He truly believed that a small, elite group, an invisible government, as he put it, needed to guide the public for their own good. And this was his big idea, the engineering of consent. Now, Bernays was Sigmund Freud's nephew, and he had this light bulb moment where he took his uncle's ideas about the subconscious mind of one person and thought, hey, what if I could apply that to everyone? He figured you could just skip all the boring rational arguments. If you could tap directly into people's deepest desires and their secret fears, you could get them to believe or do just about anything.
Now, to be fair, Bernays wasn't the only one thinking along these lines. You had guys like Walter Lippmann, who argued that public opinion needed to be managed by experts, and newspaper moguls like William Randolph Hearst, who used wild, sensational stories to sell papers and even push for war. But Bernays, he was different. He didn't just practice the stuff, he systematized it. He turned manipulation into a respectable profession.
Okay, so the theory is one thing, but what does this look like in practice? Let's open up the case files and see how Bernays' engineering had some massive and sometimes truly devastating impacts on the real world.
First up, a client, the American Tobacco Company. Their problem was pretty simple. Women didn't smoke in public. It was considered taboo. For the tobacco company, that meant half their potential market was off limits. So what did Bernays do? He didn't create an ad about how great cigarettes tasted. No, he hired a group of fashionable young women to march in the New York City Easter Parade, all of them smoking cigarettes, which he brilliantly branded as torches of freedom, a symbol of feminist empowerment.
So did it work? Oh yeah, the results were absolutely insane. The percentage of cigarettes bought by women more than doubled in just a few years, jumping from 5% to 12%. Bernays proved you don't sell the steak, you sell the sizzle. He sold an idea, and the product is tagged along for the ride. All right, next case, the Beech-Nut Packing Company. They wanted to sell more bacon, but Americans usually ate pretty light breakfasts. So Bernays pays a doctor to ask 5,000 other doctors a cleverly worded question. Is a hearty breakfast better than a light one? I mean, of course they're going to say yes. Bernays then took that study and sent it out to newspapers everywhere with the headline, 4,500 physicians recommend hearty breakfasts. And then he just suggested that bacon and eggs would be a great option. And just like that, a PR campaign invented the all-American breakfast.
But his work wasn't all cigarettes and breakfast foods. This is where it gets dark. In the 1950s, his client was the United Fruit Company. They were worried because the democratically elected president of Guatemala, Jacobo Arbenz, was planning land reform. So Bernays launched an absolutely massive PR campaign in the US, painting Arbenz as a dangerous Soviet puppet. The result? A CIA-backed coup overthrew a sovereign, democratic government. This plunged Guatemala into a brutal 36-year civil war that left an estimated 200,000 people dead, all of it to protect the profits of a banana company.
And really, this was the logical endpoint of his work. He had started out helping sell World War I to an American public that really didn't want any part of it. And after he saw how effective that was, he had a chilling realization. If you can use these techniques to sell war, you can use them to sell literally anything.
So, Bernays was the architect. But how does the machine he built actually run day to day on a massive scale? Let's dig into the theory and look at the blueprints for the whole system. It really starts with this key idea from his contemporary, Walter Lippmann, the pseudo-environment. Lippmann's point was simple.
We don't actually react to the real world. We react to a picture of the world that has been created for us, mostly by the media. We're acting based on the map, not the actual territory. So, fast forward a few decades, and two thinkers, Noam Chomsky and Edward S. Herman, basically drew up the schematic for the machine Bernays had pioneered. They called it the propaganda model, and it showed how our media system maintains control not through force, but by passing all information through a series of invisible filters that quietly shape what we see, hear, and think.
So what are these 5 filters? Well, first, there's ownership. Media companies are huge corporations. At the end of the day, their goal is profit. Second, advertising. That's where the real money is, and you can't run stories that are going to upset your biggest advertisers. Third is sourcing. The media needs a constant stream of news, so they rely heavily on powerful sources like the government and corporations. Fourth, flack. If the media does step out of line, they can expect a coordinated storm of negative feedback to push them back. And finally, number 5, the common enemy. Think about how Bernays painted Guatemala's president as a communist. This filter works by manufacturing fear to rally everyone together against the shared enemy.
Okay, so we have the architect and we have the blueprint. So how does this connect back to that video of the Sinclair news anchors we saw at the very beginning? Well, let's trace the legacy and see this modern machine in action. The wild part is that Bernays' playbook from the 1920s is the modern playbook. The press release that's written to sound exactly like a real news article, that was him. Using celebrities to make you feel a certain way about a product, him too. He even pioneered astroturfing. That's when a corporation creates a fake grassroots movement to make it look like there's real public support for their cause. This isn't just history, this is standard practice in PR and marketing today. Let's just take one of those filters, the sourcing filter. Back in Bernays' day, that meant hiring a bunch of doctors to create the illusion of a medical consensus on bacon. Now, let's fast forward to the Iraq War. It looks like the Pentagon's embedded journalism program, where reporters' entire access, and therefore their whole perspective, was completely controlled by the military. It's the exact same principle, just on a much bigger scale. And you know, sometimes that invisible government that Bernays was so proud of wasn't just a metaphor. It became terrifyingly real. Declassified files have since revealed Operation Mockingbird, a secret CIA program during the Cold War that recruited hundreds of American journalists to be intelligence assets. They weren't just getting information from sources, they were these sources, pushing propaganda directly into the news we all consumed. The sheer scope of his influence is just mind-boggling. When you look at even a partial list of his clients, you see the titans of industry, the biggest names in media, the U.S. State Department, the CIA, and multiple U.S. presidents. Bernays wasn't some fringe figure. He was in the room, shaping reality from the very center of American power. So this all brings us right back to the here and now, right back to us. We've seen the architect, we've seen the blueprints, and we've seen the modern machine. What does it all really mean for you and me today?
You know, Edward Bernays lived all the way to 103. And in interviews late in his life, he showed zero regret. He stood by his methods completely. For him, influencing the leaders, and through them, the rest of us, was just the smart, efficient way to run a society. His goal was never to inform us. It was to direct us.
So the next time you see a viral ad or a news story that gets you all fired up or a political message that feels just right, it's probably worth stopping for a second to ask the question that all of this history demands. Am I being informed right now, or am I being engineered? And maybe the most important question of all is, who's pulling the levers?